Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to the Netherlands once again, and we're going to have a look at yet another of the beers that I brought back with me from a recent trip down there. So for this one, we are going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a couple of times before. This is going to be review number 4 or 5 from these guys, if memory serves me correctly. They're a very well respected name when it comes to Dutch craft beer, one of the more recognisable names I guess you could say as well, and this is a style that we don't come across all that often here on the channel, so I have to say I'm very curious to see how this one turns out. So fingers crossed it's another good beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Haarlem, which is to the west of the capital city Amsterdam, and we're having a look at another beer from Jopen Bier. So this one is called the Johannieter, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it comes in at 9% ABV, and this one is a Weizen Doppelbock. So yeah, really looking forward to this. So this particular bottle has a little bit of age on it. As far as I can figure out, this one was brewed in 2018. But the one, this bottle was one of the ones that was given to me by the guys at the Dutch Beer Collective. So if they were giving me this bottle when it's a little bit older, it must be pretty nice with a little bit of age on it actually. So yeah, this could be quite interesting. The newer label has a red roundel on it, which you would have seen in my La La Lager review. It's got a kind of similar label to that, and I only realised that this one had a little bit of age on it when I had a little quick look on the Untappd to see if I could find out about the name, but I actually got the information on that from the website, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But always nice to return to Jopen, of course. I first encountered these guys back in about 2013 or 2014. If memory serves me correctly, when I was down in the Netherlands, and yeah, I enjoyed the beer that I had from them then, so certainly nice to review a few of their newer things here on the channel as well. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then. So as always with my Dutch reviews, a massive shout out to the guys in the Dutch Beer Collective. We have Remy Den Dupe, who is Beer Geek Holland, the OG Dutch beer tuber and all-round sexy beast. We have my very good friend and lover, Thomas Hoendam, who is Thomas Open, lovely guy, really getting into his stride with his beer reviews, I think, which is great to see. We have Jaben Kaspers, who of course is the Black IPA slag, we all love him. And then we have Douglas Hesselmans, who's the newest member of the group and the most gangster of them all. But all 4 of them are lovely guys. I'm sure you'll see them feature on my channel again at some point fairly soon. Hopefully we can get down to the Netherlands again at some point fairly soon and do a beer festival together or something like that. That would be pretty awesome to do, but I'm sure you'll see them featuring on the channel. In the meantime though, make sure you go and show them some love. I'll put the link to the Dutch Beer Collective Instagram and Facebook pages for you down below, and you can check out their channels. So go and give them a subscribe, watch some of their videos. They've got some great things there, and they're really highlighting the Dutch beer scene very nicely. There's some great beers in the Netherlands these days, incidentally. So yeah, definitely check out some of the Dutch beers if you get the chance, and of course my friends in the Dutch Beer Collective. But yeah, let's crack on with this then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Jopen Bier before, and we will no doubt add some more to that at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Dutch beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite regularly at the moment because I've been working my way through my beers that I brought back, of course, but I'm sure we'll continue to add to that regularly in the future as well. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is massively appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit about Jopen Bier then. So Jopen, as I've mentioned to you already, are from Haarlem in the Netherlands, just to the west of the capital city Amsterdam, and once upon a time Haarlem was actually amongst the most important brewing cities in the Netherlands, and the beer used to be transported around the city in 112 litre barrels, which were called Jopen, hence the name of this brewery. But the Jopen Bier was originally produced by the Stichting Haarlem's Biergenootschap, which is the Haarlem Beer Society, and this organisation was founded back in 1992. But the motive of it was to recapture some of the ancient beer recipes of Haarlem in order to commemorate the city's 750th anniversary and return them to the current commercial market. But 2 beer recipes were found in Haarlem City archives, and the first of these dated from 1407, and it entered the market under the name Coit after being brewed at Leuven University back in 1995. But the beer was later called Jopen after those original wooden barrels that I mentioned earlier. And then the Jopen Bier beer company was officially established in 1996. But initially the beer was brewed at Haarlem Brewery in Hulst in Belgium, and then at Le Trappe Brewery in Berkel Inschut, and then in Ertvelde in Belgium, and at the that was at the Van Steenberg Brewery actually. So the Jopen beers in the early days kind of moved around basically where they were brewed. But in 2005 it was announced that the Jacobskerk in the centre of the city was going to be transformed into a brewery, and this was then occupied by Jopen, and it opened its doors to the public in 2011. And there's also a cafe and restaurant in there as well, and it is this that is known as the Jopenkerk, which is kind of cool. So I'm hoping that Thomas and I and the other Dutch guys as well, if they feel like joining, can go and visit that at some point. I would really like to go and film a little out and about video in the Jopenkerk. That would be really awesome. But in 2013 they began to build a new production facility in the Waardepolder Industrial Park to meet the international demand for their beer, and this facility actually produces the vast majority of their beers today. So if you have a bottle of beer from these guys, I think most of it, you know, there's about a 99% chance that it's come from their new brewery. I think most of the production, as far as I could see, that happens in the old brewery is you know, like small batch beers, pilot beers and things and stuff for the little brew pub and restaurant and things that they've got. But as of May 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 290 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and the current Jopen head brewer is Chris Wiese. So yeah, kind of an interesting brewery, this one. It's quite cool to see a historical organisation come, you know, resurrect historic recipes and then get them out there on the commercial market. It kind of reminds me a little bit of what Williams Brothers Brewery back in Scotland did to a degree. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Jopen Bier for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram as well to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on and have a look at this beer itself. So as I mentioned to you earlier on, this one is a 9% Weizen Doppelbock. It's a seasonal beer for October, November and December apparently. They rebrew it every year, but the name is taken from the old Johannes Kloster, which was in central Amsterdam, and apparently these buildings now house a collection of the city's old brewers' labels. But once upon a time, you know, the word cloister, that would be a monastery of some description. So yeah, pretty cool actually. I guess when they're in the Jopenkerk, when they've got the Jopenkerk, of course, then it just kind of makes sense that they would do a beer for something like that as well, a little tribute to the old monastic brewing that no doubt went on there once upon a time. But yeah, let's get this guy out then, and we'll have a little look at the beer itself. So quite a little look at the artwork for this one before we open it up then. Brain's not working in this review, guys, so do apologise, my brain going a little bit crazy. But yeah, as you can see, this is the older label. You can see on the back here, this is the older symbol of Jopen Brewery as well, or Jopen Bier. That's also on the little top label here. I don't think the current ones have the little top labels on them actually, but there you can see a nice old school Jopen bottle cap there as well. So that one will need to go in the collection with the other ones too. But yeah, 330ml bottle. This one, no idea what this beer would cost, but yeah, a 9% of Weizen and Doppelbock. So yeah, let's get this guy out then, and we'll get on with the tasting. So I'm not sure exactly what to expect from this beer. If it's, you know, when it comes to the Weizen Doppelbocks and Weizenbocks and stuff like this, they tend to be about 50% Bock, 50% Weizen, 50% Bock, 50% Weizen. So yeah, the Doppelbock, I'm guessing, will maybe lean a little bit more towards the Doppelbock side of things, because it is, you know, a Doppelbock just tends to be a bit stronger than a Hefeweizen, of course. And just looking at the initial colour that we've got of this thing, it looks like I might be right. But yeah, let's just see. There's no sediment on the bottom of this, which is what we want. You want all the haze and goodness in any wheat beer to be in that bottle. And I'm surprised actually, because there's only a few little particles floating around in this one when it's got a good couple of years on it. You maybe actually would expect it to have a little bit more sediment than it has. So let me just check that this is lined up nicely. I think it is. So yeah, my OCD is happy. But before the head on this beer disappears, you could see that it poured with about a 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say fawn coloured head. That's fading away to be a very nice, it's going to fade away to be a very nice kind of thinner foamy layer, of course, but it'll leave a nice foamy ring around the edge of the glass as well. So yeah, in terms of colour, as you can see from this one, it's poured a lovely, very dark, sort of ebony colour, this one, I guess we could say. So remember, the colour of your beer is dependent on a couple of things. One, the type of malts that you use, that determines the magnitude of the colour of the beer, and then also the length of your wort boil. So the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar caramelizes, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Barrel aging and adjuncts, of course, can play a role in determining the colour of the beer, but overall it's you know, it's usually the type of malts that you would use that would determine it. But I think just going from the colour of this beer and the sort of, you know, to a degree the haziness that we've got out of it, I think this one might be, yeah, a slightly longer boil or something like that. But yeah, let's take a look at the aroma then and see how we get on with this one. Definitely more of a kind of dark ebony rosewood colour. This is kind of more similar to a Doppelbock in terms of its colour rather than anything else. But let's have a look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this one. Yeah. Lovely smelling beer, that. It smells really nice. It's kind of interesting because you can smell like a big wheaty component to it, but you can also smell the big brown sugars from the Doppelbock in here. So very interesting combination of two different German styles, of course. So yeah, I can tell you right away I'm probably going to enjoy this beer. I'm actually not sure which one of the Dutch guys gave me this, and this has been the problem with the beers that the guys at the Dutch Beer Collective gave me. I think this one might well have come from Thomas. He loves a little bit of Jopen, so I think this one might well have come from him actually. So whoever it was, if it was Thomas, thank you to you. Whoever it was, though, a big thank you to them for giving me this beer for the channel. Of course, they kept some really nice Dutch stuff for me, which has been great. But this is a beautiful smelling beer. So let's just try and break this down for you a little bit more. So the backbone of the beer, you definitely get a little touch of a woody note out of this one, which isn't surprising when the beer's got the amount of age on it that this one has. So nice little bit of a woody backbone there. You can smell the big smooth wheaty character coming out of this. You do get a little bit of the kind of banana bubblegummy note in there. There's a little bit of the kind of clovey spice, which I think goes together really nicely as well. But yeah, the aroma from the wheaty side of the beer, I think, really adds an interesting little bit of depth to the beer. But it's got a very nice balance between the two halves of the beer. Actually, I thought it was going to be quite brown sugar dominated because of the colour and things, but no, the wheat really does give you a good showing actually. But yeah, bit of a woody backbone, like I say. You can smell that lovely smooth wheaty note out of it. A bit of bubblegum, a bit of a bit of bubblegum, a little bit of as we say, a little bit of a kind of clovey spice and things in there, and that just lovely big bready note. Of course, there's a wee bit of bread crust in there too, but there's some awesome brown sugary qualities to this one. So you can certainly smell a nice little bit of a highly caramelized treacle molasses sort of thing to the beer. You do get a little bit of a sweeter caramel and also a bit more of a kind of toasty brown sugar in there as well. Is there anything more that we can say about the malt base? Maybe one or two little tiny nutty elements in there, but definitely woody and nutty undertones to this one. Not unusual, of course, with a Doppelbock beer, but more unusual probably with a Weizen. I do want to review a few more Weizens on the channel at some point soon. I've not reviewed so many wheat beers over the last little while, right enough, but yeah. The malty side of this beer, I think, is very, very nice. When this beer is about 3 and a bit years old, something like that, you're not going to get much out of this beer in terms of hoppiness. You can get a little hint of a smooth earthiness to the beer, you get a wee touch of a grassiness and floral character to it, but you know, as I say, most of the hops will have dropped out of this. Most likely, I would think that this beer would use Northern Brewer originally. So you know, Northern Brewer is a German hop. It's used quite often in Doppelbocks because it gives you a lovely kind of red fruity colour, and there's just something about the way the fruits come out in this beer that's making me think, yeah, Northern Brewer. So let's try and break down the fruity component of the beer. There's not much to say about the green side of the hops, to be honest with you, other than a little bit of earthiness, a tiny hint of floral character, and then a wee bit, just a wee touch of grassiness. So yeah, let's have a little look at that fruity side of things then. So for me, I do get a wee bit of there is a little touch of a kind of phenolic character out of this one. You know, a little bit like that kind of boozy, Christmas puddingy sort of vibe, which is definitely quite interesting. So I can appreciate that about the beer. Boozy, fruitcakey sort of thing. A nice little touch of a sharp, there's a nice little touch of a kind of sharp raisin in there. Not too sharp though, right enough, because that would be a sign of oxidation, that would be worrying. But you get a little bit of raisin out of this one, I should say. Some nice kind of plummy notes out of it. Definitely some lighter figgy and kind of blackcurranty notes in there. Maybe a wee bit of blackberry as well, a little bit more of an oily kind of blackberry. But these are typical elements that you would expect of the kind of Northern Brewer hop profile. But yeah, I think this is a very interesting beer in terms of its aroma. So yeah, the wheat really gives you a good showing, which I'm certainly happy about. So yeah, do take a little bit of time to just ponder over the aroma of this one before you get stuck in. It is, to be honest, I think overall it is maybe a little bit more of a Doppelbock, but the wheat doesn't go unnoticed. I think that's probably a good way to describe it. The wheat is basically adding a bit of breadiness and a bit of, you know, kind of depth to the malt base, I guess we could say. But yeah, I think this one could turn out to be very interesting. So yeah, let's have a taste of it then and see how we go. So this one is the Johannieter. Again, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, I don't know. But this one is a 9% Weizen Doppelbock from Jopen Bier in Haarlem in the Netherlands. A massive shout out again to the guys at the Dutch Beer Collective. Make sure you show them some love. But let's get stuck into this one. Slanje, skull, cheers and prost. Oh yeah, that is pretty nice. That is pretty nice. You know, I've not tried the beer. I've not tried a new version of the beer to compare right enough, but as it stands, it comes across very nicely actually. It's got a little bit of dryness to it as well, which is quite interesting. But I don't think that's anything really negative. It might just be a little bit more toasty malt in the Doppelbock side of beer, but when the beer's this dark, that would kind of be expected, to be honest with you. But yeah, it's certainly, the wheat I would say is a little bit more prominent in the aroma than it is in the flavour. I think overall it is more. It really is more of a Doppelbock than anything else, but the wheat comes out really nicely in the aftertaste. The wheat sort of acts out. The Weizen side of this beer really shows itself a little bit more in the aftertaste, and again, it is just adding a little bit of depth to the beer. So it is like, you know, this one I can see why they call it a Weizen Doppelbock, if you like, because it is, you know, it's probably about, you know, it's more kind of like, yeah, 2/3 Doppelbock and maybe a third Weizen in a sense. But it's whatever it is, it's a lovely beer, and that of course is always the main question. But this is great. So if you get the chance to try this, have a look at it. And I think I'd like to try a kind of fresh one at some stage as well with one of the Dutch guys and review it. As a collab review. That would be really interesting. So maybe that's something we can sort out around Christmas time, is do another group review with the Dutch Beer Collective. That could be quite fun. But yeah, I think this is just, it is very nice. It really grows on you. But as I say, the wheat characteristics for me come out a little bit more in the in the aftertaste. I have to say I would be very curious to know as well whether this one is an ale or whether it's a lager beer, because it actually has a little bit of the kind of, it's got a bit of the kind of cleanliness actually that you would expect of the lager. The Doppelbock, of course, is a lager, low temperature fermentation, bottom fermenting yeast, whereas the Hefeweizen is an ale. It's a top fermenting yeast that they use in that, a higher temperature fermentation yeast. So yeah, this one actually comes across as a little bit more like a kind of lager, but I don't know how using wheat actually would, you know, how good that is in a lager. I'm not technically experienced enough with brewing to tell you that. Harry at Blue Nose Beer Reviews is the one that could probably tell you a little bit more. But yeah, just an interesting point that came to mind. But yeah, let's just break the flavour of this beer down then a little bit. So the backbone of the beer, it's interesting because you do have just a little kind of drizzle, if you like, just a little hint of a roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust in there, and that's the absolute backbone of the beer. But if we're talking about the middle third of your palate, there's definitely a nice, if you go into the front half of that middle third of your palate, brain's not working again, you do get a wee bit of a woody undertone to the beer and one or two little nutty notes in there. But as I say, well-fired, toasty bread crust sitting underneath it. The woodiness comes out a little bit later on, and then things like that there. But sitting on top of that, you get those lovely smooth elements from the wheat, and you can feel within that sort of bready layer, that wheaty bready layer that the beer has, there's definitely a bit of bread crust at either end of that middle third of your palate. But within that, you get a wee bit on the front half of that middle third of your palate. It's a bit more kind of bubblegummy and sweet, pardon me, and then on the back half, it's a little bit more. It is a little bit more sort of how would we say? It is a little bit more kind of sort of spicy in a sense. You do get a little bit more of the kind of clovey, spicy note out of the beer, and then right in the middle, of course, there's that sort of typical banana thing that you'll get from a Hefeweizen. But it is a very nice beer. The wheat really adds a very interesting layer of complexity to this one, and it comes out a little bit more in the aftertaste. I would definitely say that about this beer for sure. But yeah, the malty base in this one is really interesting. But sitting on top of that, of course, you get the big brown sugary elements that you would expect of the Doppelbock. So in the middle of your palate, you've got a nice big oil, there's a sort of big circle, and you've got a big oily component to it. So it has a, how would you say, it has a really nice, it's got like a big kind of just treacly molasses kind of thing there, like a highly caramelized brown sugar. It's almost got a little bit of a slightly well-fired, roasty kind of element to it as well. So the brown sugar has a bit of layer. It's got a bit, you do get a bit more of that toasty brown sugar underneath, but you can feel the really thick, oily brown sugar sitting on top of it. And that, of course, is the alcohol side of the beer. At 9%, this isn't the heaviest thing you're going to come across, but still, it does have a wee bit of alcoholic kind of punch to it in a sense. But yeah, as you move further out from the centre of your palate, you will get a little bit of a sweet caramel there, but then you've got a nice kind of toastier caramel as you go out towards the edges of the palate. So yeah, I like that about this one. The middle third of your palate is where all the complexity in this beer is, and I think it works. It does work really nicely. So yeah, I think we've covered that middle third of your palate there, which is just great. But yeah, border region between middle third and back third of your palate, there's a bit of bready build up there again, and a wee bit more of a kind of bread crust. I always find that on the border regions, this is kind of why I divide the beer up into the flavour up into 3/3. I just find there's these regions where you just get slight build ups. Again, plural's terrible. My English is getting bad these days because I'm focusing on Swedish more. But yeah, you get a little bit of a bready build-up and the bread crust in there. Then the back third of your palate, I think it really, that's where you get the smoothness of the wheat. You get this nice, smooth, wheaty backbone on that back third of your palate. And sitting on top of that, you get the more airy, kind of yeasty components out of the beer. So yeah, you can feel the flavour of the beer is a little bit taller on that back third of your palate. And as you move further forward, it kind of condenses down a little bit. And then in the middle third of your palate, the flavour is, condensed down even further. It drops off quite a little bit and just goes... And you've got all those nice kind of layers in there, which is great. But like I say, with the malty side of the beer, the wheaty component comes out a little bit more the further that you go into the aftertaste. But yeah, this works. This beer works very, very nicely from the malty side of things. Yeah, I think it's fair to say about 2/3 Doppelbock, 1/3 wheat, I would say. But yeah, the wheat is adding a really nice level of depth to this one, which is great. But yeah, hoppy side of things then. So, as I said earlier, and with this beer being the age it is, about 3 years old, much of the hoppy character has dropped out of it, but some of it is still there. You do get a little bit of earthiness, a kind of smooth earthiness in the back corners of the palate, and as you move further forward, it's got a little bit of a herbal quality, and the herbal quality kind of spreads a little bit further forward, and then as you get towards the front corners of the palate, then there's a little bit of a more kind of floral aromatic sort of thing to this one, but it is quite minimal at this age. That's kind of part and parcel. Your hoppy character is going to progressively drop out of the beer over time. But round the front curve of the palate, a little bit lighter and kind of grassier. Of course, there's a teeny little bit of zest still in there, which is quite interesting. But I suspect Northern Brewer in this one. So the hops, the German hops, if it is a German hop that's in this, German hops tend to have a good bright green component to them, and I think that's probably why I'm still getting a little bit of it here on the on the hoppy side of this beer too, which is great. But yeah, on the front third of your palate, then this is where you get all the nice kind of fruity components out of the beer. But border region between front third and middle third, again, it's that little bit of a doughy, bready build up and a bit of bread crust, and it's almost got, as you move into that front third of the tongue, there's a little bit of a kind of cakey element there. But then the basis of the backbone, I should say, of that front third of your palate is a bit of a bread crust. It's a smooth bread crust, and it's got, you can get a little bit of the wheaty quality in there too. And then on top of that, you've got that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer, and I very much like how that goes together. So the fruity side of things is, I really think that's Northern Brewer. It's just something in my head telling me Northern Brewer all the way. But yeah, so there is a wee bit on the back half of that front third of your palate. There's a wee bit of raisin. You get a little bit of kind of plum underneath, but those are quite minimal in a sense. The fruity part of this beer is actually quite light and airy in a sense. It's not the biggest and oiliest that I've come across, and I think it's the wheaty side of the beer that makes it feel a little bit lighter in a sense. So the fruity side of this beer is a lot more kind of figgy and blackcurranty, but you do get a wee hint on the front half of that front third of your tongue. You do get just a little bit of a kind of blackberry type note of it, just a little tiny touch of a blackberry. But for me, the fruity notes that come out of this one that really linger there, it's a bit of a fig and a blackcurranty kind of element. So yeah. But yeah, in the beginning, you do get a wee bit more of a kind of raisiny, plummy type thing as well. But yeah, I certainly like how that goes together in this beer. So yeah, this is a really interesting one. I love beers that kind of give you something a little bit different and test your palate, and this one certainly has done that. As I said though, I would be curious to try a new one and just see how this beer has kind of changed over time and stuff. But it does have a good, it's interesting because it does feel like it's actually a lager, this one, just because of the kind of cleanliness and things that it has. So I think this is a good point to move on and round off the review with the mouthfeel then. So overall, I would say this beer, it's kind of top end to mid-bodied for me. The carbonation, again, is very, very smooth, but this beer really has a sort of clean wetness to it. It really has just a little touch of lager for me. It feels more like a kind of wheaty lager in a sense. It really has, it's got the sort of cleanliness and just slight crispness that you get from a Doppelbock. It's really got more of a Doppelbock mouthfeel than that big, sort of thick, smooth, but still airy thing that you get from a Hefeweizen. So yeah, interesting from that perspective for sure. But the malt base, like I say, very smooth, nice big toasty brown sugar element, a little bit of dryness in there, as I said. So the malt base is interesting, smoothness and a bit of spice from the wheat, big brown sugar notes, a bit of kind of toastiness in there, and there's a little bit of a kind of let's say with the hoppy bitterness, you're getting maybe 15, 20 IBUs out of this, I think, which is kind of part and parcel for a Hefeweizen beer. It feels as if it's sort of Hefeweizen level bitterness that you're getting out of this. I think Hefeweizens are normally 15 IBUs, but certainly this beer is not going to blow the head off you in terms of its bitterness levels. And the fruity side of things, like I said, is kind of nice and light and wet. So yeah, quite an interesting one this. I'd say about 2/3, yeah, 2/3 Doppelbock, maybe 1/3 Hefeweizen if we're going to sort of figure out where the boundaries are in this beer. But whatever it is, I'd love to see the recipe of this and just see how they've designed it. But whatever that recipe contains, they've produced a nice beer here. So big thumbs up to Jopen once again for this, and thank you to the guys at the Dutch Beer Collective for giving me something that's, you know, that is as interesting as this one to review. They've all been good beers, but I think this one is potentially the most interesting one for the reasons we've talked about. But yeah, I think we can round off this review with that then. So this one was the Johannieter, the Johannieter, a 9% Weizen Doppelbock from Jopen Bier in Haarlem, just to the west of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. A really interesting beer, this one, and definitely worth trying if you get the chance. Thank you again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Jopen. Give me some other Dutch brewery recommendations as well, and I'll ask the Dutch guys about getting a hold of those over the next little while at some stage too. We'll need to do a restock of Dutch beers, I guess, later on in the year. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media. Go and show my friends in the Dutch Beer Collective some love, and do check out some of these Jopen beers if you get the chance. Thanks again for watching. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and prost. Make sure you check out this beer and Jopen Bier from Haarlem.